Bring this to your
Oh,
audience.
right. Yeah. We're going to go live with Brent Leary, who is currently setting up his sharing destinations. That's okay, Brent. Get your sharing settings sorted.
Sharing is caring, man. You know.
Do you remember the old days when you could go live and like 200 people would show up and you
Yeah.
before
I remember.
before LinkedIn buried us in the algorithm?
I remember when we did like our very first executive roundtable. This is during the pandemic. It's probably like October of 2020.
Yeah.
We're probably like one of the first to kind of do that. And we had over 1,200 people register
Yep.
and over 1,100 comments in like 2 hours. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, about 500, like the highest audience of like simultaneous streamers were like 500. It's been downhill ever since.
Yeah. So I got Brent Leary. This is John Reed. This is the old impromptu video show. Brent's going to help me test out a camera. I also want to poke some holes in some AI leadership BS I was reading, but I want to talk a little bit about this video thing because I think this is kind of interesting. Uh, so you'll see all over LinkedIn that LinkedIn's aggressively promoting video, but that doesn't mean that's great news for B2B video producers. And in fact, the algorithmic reach of video on LinkedIn has gone way, way down. And, we learned that the hard way because used to be able to go up live on an afternoon like this, and you'd have 50 people. And that was really fun because you didn't have to like plan and promote it as much and you could just do it. So you say, well, what is LinkedIn up to then? How can LinkedIn promote video so aggressively and then not do this? Well, the answer is they don't want to promote this stuff. They want to promote TikTok type videos. So LinkedIn wants to be the TikTok B2B. So if you really want to get video views, it's not about this live event that you've spent all week preparing for and making it totally awesome. It's about just whipping out your phone, walking down the street and talking about how as a big time AI influencer, you're really noticing, how your chat GPT is kicking ass today. And, that's going to go viral, right? In the LinkedIn algorithm, but not your show that you worked all week on. Well, I'm giving LinkedIn a hard time about this right now because I think there's room for both. I don't think it's a one or the other thing. I don't really have a problem if they want to create phone advertising friendly video monetization model. But I'm calling them out a little bit because Brent, I think there's a time and a place for this type of thing too. Not the seat of the pants show today, but the kind of stuff that we put work into and try to promote on our channels, your CRM player shows. I think these shows matter to the community in B2B. They matter to customers, and LinkedIn's missing the boat on this. So I'm trying to give them a hard time. So we'll see what happens.
Sometimes you got to actually think of the human and not the algorithm all the time.
Yep.
I mean, one of the things that's nice about LinkedIn is, well, there are a couple, there are more than a couple, but, people usually gravitate towards LinkedIn for like the business side of their life. I mean, you're seeing more and more people share personalized stuff, and that's fine, personal stuff, but most people are actually here because they're trying to like further their career or get connections to network, and hopefully that turns into some level of engagement, whether it's a job or a business opportunity or an engagement. And that's just a slightly different foundation than what TikTok has. And I could see it incorporating some of that into this, but I think it's important for LinkedIn to remember its roots. I mean, nobody thought of them as a TikTok. Nobody still thinks of it as TikTok. I think there are things that they could improve to make a video experience for the folks who are viewing and creating video on LinkedIn that doesn't have to always be centered around the hot thing. I mean, yeah, TikTok's successful. And it's successful for what, the audience that it was actually created for. And now it's growing out of that. But I think LinkedIn just needs to be careful, but not to forget about their audience, their core audience, and what they've done and what they are used to, while trying to reach out and do some of that other stuff.
Totally. And like when I go and catch some of your shows and you built a community around that where you have your traditional segments, a moment of Sven or Stump the Godfather, whatever, and you got a lot of people that want to be a part of that. And the idea is to make it easy for that to happen, not make it harder for that to happen. And, and it's not all fun and games too. Like last week when you had me on an AI debate show and stuff. One of the reasons why we want to have these in-depth discussions is because these are not simple problems. We spent a long time talking about our various takes on policies around AI, and you know, honestly, you need a longer show sometimes to really get into that. And so I would like LinkedIn to realize they can kind of do this walk and chew gum thing and not kind of downplay the content that they don't think is as easily viral. And part of it too is like, you know, you're really good about making the highlight clips, and I want to get into that in a second. But there's a lot of opportunities then to take that and slice and dice it. So just for the viewers' information, one of the things I've been encouraging LinkedIn to do is, okay, maybe we're not going to win in the algorithm, but there's still a bunch of stuff they could do to make it easier for people to find our stuff. So, for example, like, why can't you subscribe to a video show like you can to a newsletter? It doesn't make any sense that you can't do that. There's a lot of promotional tools that could be a lot better. Like, for example, right now, if I want to like invite someone to a video, like I can blast it to all my first degree connections in the world, but that's not very nice. Um, but what I do is I try to send it to the people that I think are going to be interested, but I can't save that. So
Yeah.
each time I got to do it again, and there's simple things like that that could make things a whole lot better. And then people will tell me like, I signed up for your video and then I didn't get a notification when it was going live. And I'm like, come on, man. Like that's just easy stuff. Like these are people working hard to build these audiences. So someday I'm going to get LinkedIn's attention, but for now, I'm just floating down the algorithmic stream trying to keep my head
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, I think the number one thing, I guess, is while we just talked about LinkedIn needs to remember its foundationals, where it started and who it started with. Uh, with that in mind, they also need to actually remember that a lot of people are not looking at LinkedIn to get a job anymore. A lot of people are looking at LinkedIn because it is a place where
Right.
people can put their content, particularly that's focused on business stuff. And there's a built-in audience for that. So why not make it easier for us to reach that audience and engage that audience and let that audience know when we are doing stuff? I mean, I look at some of the clips that come out of our shows, and some of these things get like a minute long clip.
Right.
It can get like 5,000 views in over like 8 hours of total viewing minutes.
Yep.
That's nothing to sneeze at. I mean, it's not like
Yep.
YouTube or TikTok numbers, but it shows a level of engagement and attraction to the content that maybe you want to try to push that further. Maybe you want to help us push it further as opposed to,
Right.
the shiny new object over TikTok. I mean, yeah, you want to incorporate some of that stuff, but also think about what we're doing and how the content is different, from a high level is just plain out different. The audience is plain out different than what's going on at TikTok or on YouTube. Work towards that. That's your strength.
Absolutely. So I want to get into a little bit this post I'm writing and run it by you. But before I do, I want to do a quick camera test because I got a new camera and I just want to get your opinion on this because one of the cool things about this is I can actually switch back and forth between them. Uh,
Mm.
so now this one I have on now is the one I have been using historically for the last couple years. It's been incredibly reliable. It's a huddle cam, but I haven't been totally satisfied with the final image results sometimes. Now, don't worry so much about the lighting and exposure because I got to tweak those settings. I'm just curious about the general vibe of the shot. So this is the huddle cam, and then this is the one I just got, which is called an Ange tube cam or something. And the reason I like it is because it's got a remote I can control a lot of the settings on. I really like having remotes. Anyway, I'm gonna switch over. Tell me what you think. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, switch.
It's a sharper image right away. You can see it's a much sharper image.
That's what I
Uh,
was thinking too, right? There's a sharper clarity to everything, right?
yeah, it looks good. Everything is a lot cleaner. Like I'm
Mm,
looking at your back, your whiteboard there. I
yeah.
can read. I can even read the stuff in the red. All of it.
Oh,
I see
damn.
a
You can read
hashtag.
that little Diginomica thing? I gotta redo that.
But
Damn,
before,
man.
I don't think
You
I
can
was
read
able
that.
to read that before.
Oh, wow.
So it's a
Okay.
and there's a little bit more light too. So you got, it was interesting because before we came on and you had your other camera, I commented, man, it's a little dark. Now it's not as dark. I could see your
Right.
face much better. So there's whatever lens it has on it, it's bringing in the light as opposed to not being able to take advantage of it.
So this supposedly has a little bit of AI going on with the light stuff, so I may not have to adjust it as much
Uh,
because the other one, I had to do more manual adjustments, and I could improve the lighting a little bit, but my perception is the resolution of this one is just flat out better.
Way better.
Yeah.
It's
Okay,
a much
cool.
cleaner image. Yeah.
Alright, so now I just need to test it for, reliability. Now, the interesting thing about this is, like, if you wanna do the highest resolution, you gotta do the local recordings and stuff, and I don't wanna deal with local recordings for my videos, so I'm not going there just yet. But, I know the pros like you know how to deal with local recordings, but I want something a little bit simpler. And that's always the tension, right? Is like getting the best production values, but within the scope of what you're able to produce, right? And for me, if I have to spend much time on like the production side afterwards, then my
Mm.
content production goes down.
Now,
So,
one
all
thing
right.
you might want to do, and this is
Yeah.
regardless of your camera, you might want to center yourself in the shot a little bit more.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was saying I need to be a little higher, maybe.
Yeah,
That's
you're
a
a
good idea.
little lower in because you're basically right. And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
always matters where you if you're leaning in or out like this. But right now, go up a
A little
couple of
bit
inches.
higher.
Yeah, a little bit higher. Then you'll be
Yeah.
a little bit more centered in the shot.
Yeah, yeah, good call. All right, I'll have to play around with that a little bit. I have a couple ideas for that.
Don't worry,
So,
Paul. I've been trying to get Paul to center his shot for a year. He
yeah.
just stays. I was like, okay, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, and I'm trying to strike a balance too because there's some background elements I wanna get in there too, so it's like a little bit tricky, but yeah, yeah, I think there's a little more I could do there. So yeah, and I think it's good because like the thing I like about talking with you about this stuff is you spend so much time like testing different cameras and testing different things and I don't like obsessing over it daily, but I do like improving on it over time, right? Like you get a baseline of acceptability and then you keep tweaking and trying. And I think that seems like what you do and
Yep.
it pays off.
Well,
So cool.
I wanna be able to I don't wanna have to, like, go through setup every time I jump on. So, I
Right.
once I got my camera and the lens and the lighting the way I wanted it, um, I just leave it alone. I have another camera exactly like this one, so I can play around with that, but I leave this one here a couple of years ago, I would have to, like, all the travel for our conferences we do, I would have to break that down because that's the only camera I had. So I had to break it down and put in a bag, travel, and then to go through a whole setup process. And it's so difficult to get it looking the same way every time if you do that. So I don't blame you. Keep that, get it to where you like it, and just log it in.
Right. So here's the interesting thing about video. So these long form video shows can be really fun because like when you had us on for the debate last week, there's plenty of time for back and forth. And one of the best things about that is the live experience for viewers, right? So in that show, you did a fair amount of promo. You had a decent audience there. And the thing that's great about that is they keep rolling in. So that's the advantage of the more extended live format because people always say, well, keep things short or whatever. What they don't think about is like when you're rolling live, more people will come and join. And once people start participating, that does juice the algorithm a bit. And so other people see their comments and start coming. So there's an advantage there. Like, so Brian and I, for our last Enterprise Month show, we're rolling for about an hour and 20 minutes. And the cool thing about that is even at the top of the hour, you're getting new people with new questions. And so in some ways, it's a little bit like a talk radio vibe, right? Where people will dip in and come in at a certain point. So that's really good for the live experience. However, how many people are going to come in and watch that full video replay, 3 days later or a week later? Honestly, let's be honest, not that many people are going to do that. So I think what's interesting is to think about those longer shows as the kind of raw material that help you to like put on an event, think through issues. But now you have this raw material, and what are you going to do with that? So in my case, for example, I, uh, I put it out as an audio podcast because I know that I've got a built up audience there. And also, audio is a little different. Like audio, a lot of times you do like to roll a little bit longer. Like some of these big time um YouTube podcasters and stuff with audio streams, they go like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And you can understand why, because their listeners are in commutes, they're on their treadmill. They like the longer shows, but that's not enough, right? That's not enough for today. And so we have this idea of turning these things into clips and sound bites. And I'm really curious where you stand on that now, as far as, do you like using AI for that, or do you like picking and producing your own clips? Because what I found is I hardly even have time to do the AI clips, but some of the AI clip services are getting pretty good for that. So do you use clip services, or do you do it all from scratch?
No, I use clip services, but I also do a lot of. I'm a stickler. It's gotta be quick. It can't be a lot of, like, time in between people talking. So I do a lot of stuff to try to tighten it up and keep it as, like, 60 seconds of just talk. No
Mm,
no big space, because we all know people have a very short attention span these days because there's
yeah.
so much coming at them. But one thing about the long format, and I think what you guys do, you and the cowboy, and what we do, is because we invite the long form. But one thing about that is you don't want it to be long form and scripted, because most people are not going to sit around. If they look at somebody,
Right.
they're going to be asking questions from a script, and it was something that was given to the guests, like, long in time, so they have enough time to try to script answers. We don't do that. I don't think you guys do that either. What is the great part about the live format is the live reactions along with the live dialogue and very
Yeah.
human-like, natural, interactions. And from that, you can pull some really great clips. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes it takes 60 minutes to get that thing that you can pull out, because it's hard to get. If you're only gonna be talking for 5 minutes, it's very hard to get a really deep nugget from a 5-minute thing. So like you were saying, you do an hour and 20 minutes, there's gonna be some gold in them there conversations that would not be there if
Right.
you're only doing a 5 or 10-minute thing. So, a lot of the work really is after the cameras are turned off, the
Right.
recording is turned off, and like you said, it gets very difficult to pull if you're doing, like, an hour show a week. That's still gonna commit probably another 4 or 5 hours of processing after the fact.
Right.
And before I was doing that, and I'm sure you were doing that, manually. So you would literally have to take that 60 minutes and listen to it,
Yeah.
which is, it's just very hard to do when you're traveling and doing all the other stuff we have to do.
Right.
So I am using AI, to help with part of that process. So I use a service like a Minvo or an Opus Clips. And you
Mm.
you take that 45 minutes, hour long recording, and it does like a good first pass. It'll identify, anywhere from 10 to 20 clips. And I tend to look at the first couple, more stringently, I guess, than the last ones, because they tend to be in the order of what they call going viral. So you look at that, and you
Right.
say, okay, I can use that one. And I have to do cleanup work on all of them, so I can't just take that and say, oh, it's perfect the way it is, and take it. But I can take a two or three, and then sometimes I'll take like four or five, and then I'll clip the clips and make them flow from from this one and a little from that one. Um,
Mm.
I also, some of these services, when we first started using them, they didn't have some of the really nice additional, like the audio cleanup from AI, or the
Mm.
transcripts, or the quotes, or the blog posts created. So some of these things have added some really good tools, but I'm pretty picky, so I can't just leave y'all. Well, I'll take that and just roll it out. I always have to kind of clean it up a little bit. But you find some really good stuff in that, And then I think like I think we're all trying to figure out how to extend the shelf life for these things. And, like we do these watch parties. And
Right.
a lot of times people, you know, the people that watch along with us, they are not watching us. They are part of the whole thing. They're commenting. And I think that's the big payoff for live streams is that if people want to be a part of the conversation, they'll watch in real time and they'll, engage and share their opinion. And we love that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
that's the real payoff, I think, for watching in real time is you're not just watching, you're a full-time
Right.
participant in that.
Yeah, and in fact, like that, I'm not gonna trash anyone's show, and, you all put on a bunch of shows through Players Production Network, and this happened to me one of the Players shows too, though, it was not one that you or Paul were involved with. I wanna make that really clear. But this is really pretty common, not just it's where you go to a live thing on LinkedIn and you start commenting and no one's listening. The hosts aren't paying attention to the comments. They're just doing their pundit thing. And I'm like, wow, that's a real missed opportunity there, folks. And, because once you start pulling in those comments and making it that jugular experience, it's so much more interesting. And that's the cool thing. What if I pop onto one of your shows and I start going off on stuff? Pretty soon I'm going to see my comment on the screen there, and y'all will be reacting to it or whatever. And like that is powerful. And like I think it those kinds of things and the community that you and Paul built around the production network and stuff had inspired me to update my content strategy views because I was insisting that B2B content producers should compete on relevance, not entertainment. And the reason for that is that a lot of enterprises, when they start thinking about entertainment, they start making a lot of bad mistakes. Like they start hiring celebrities to come MC stuff, and it's so awkward, and they don't know the products, and then they end up wasting so much time on production value stuff. And while I do think production values are important to a point, I've been involved in things where there were 4 or 5 dress rehearsals and stuff, and it's like,
Mm.
"Oh, for F's sake, like, just go on the air and realize that the unscripted moments are the gold, not the thing you're trying to avoid." So, but then I started realizing, yeah, relevance is the right way to compete because, look, I mean, you're competing with everything now. You're competing with Netflix and baby pictures, and it's very hard to compete on entertainment against that.
Right.
But then I realized it's more a matter of redefining entertainment. So, for example, I thought a live show like shooting the shit with you and Paul, that is entertainment. It's just a different kind of entertainment
Yeah,
than like watching, what am I watching now? I'm watching the thing on the Happy Face Killers on Paramount or whatever.
that
I,
was good, by
we
the way.
Yeah, we can't compete for entertainment value on that. But if you redefine entertainment, so that's what I did in that post. You guys can find it on Diginomica, and it was based on a video thing I did with Brent and Paul. But it was all about, yeah, we can entertain, but in a different way. It's just more about this organic kind of vibe that you create. And that's what that long form's all about. But then it's like, well, what can you do with that? And so now I'm writing a post updating on what can AI do to help us? Because I think what's interesting about I started the post by saying like, quit using AI to try to create amazing content because that's not what AI is good at. But what it is really good at is repurposing stuff in a lot of different formats. And some of it is a work in progress. So, for example, like I can't get AI to make me a good PowerPoint yet.
Mm.
Um, but like it's great for the short clips, right? And that's awesome. Like, and it's getting better at I'm gonna write about this at a summary clip too. Summary clip's a little harder because that requires the AI to use some judgment around like I challenged this Pictory AI to create a summary clip out of a 1 hour, 20-minute video. That's a little harder because that's like down to like 5 minutes. It's got to pick the most important things, but make it a coherent conversation. That's a higher bar than just spitting out 20 clips. Uh, it's getting better, and it requires some fine tuning, which I don't mind doing. And I put out I thought what was a pretty good clip on YouTube that was a summary about 6 minutes that captured, I think, some of the vibe of the show. So that's really cool. So then I started playing around with different things. So I did one where I took an article and turned it into a video. And actually, you guys got mentioned in that video, which is really funny. The AI narrator was like, and CRM players.
Yeah, and she pronounced it Didn't she pronounce it with the AZ too? I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, 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 she got it pretty good. So that was cool. So I think it's really fun to experiment with different things and then find out how good it can be and where it still comes up short. And one of the things I have in that post is I'm sharing this infographic that was done on this longer book I wrote on reaching B2B buyers. But in this case, I had to revert to a human. And I was honestly glad to pay a human to help me with that. And it was the Two Line Studios folks. You probably know Heather and her team.
oh yeah, yeah,
They do an amazing job with the live
yeah. Those etchings
shows.
that she does, the drawings in real time.
Yeah. So I'm more than glad to compensate creative humans. So I want to make it clear that I'm not about cutting humans out, but it is interesting to think about this problem of how do you repurpose these things that we work so hard on in different ways. And I actually think there's a lot of potential there, though it can be a real work in progress. And I'll give you one example of something I struggle with a lot, which is a lot of times the AI is way more buzzwordy and optimistic than I am. And they want to have they think because of all the material they've been trained on about how great technology is, they probably trained on a million vendor keynotes and stuff. They want to be like, here's the pizzazz new AI feature, you know? And but the cool thing is like some of these services now, they allow you to create things based on some of the prompt instructions. And so I will always do things like give me informal language, give me uh the controversial stuff, give me the critical stuff. And it takes some practice and it's not always perfect, but I'm finding that that really helps me to get what I'm personally looking for. Now, not everyone is looking for the same thing, right? But that's one thing that you can do to adjust it a little bit for your style, which is pretty helpful. So anyway, I got a post coming out that kind of says like, okay, here's where I got some good mileage, here's where I didn't. And it's a mixed bag.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and some of these things are evolving pretty quickly. I remember I think I started using Opus 2 years ago or something like that. And
Yeah.
I have to say, and I started using Minvo, which is another video AI editing tool, maybe a couple of weeks after that. I have to say, these folks are really updating their services and adding a bunch of things that you didn't see 2 years ago. And I think I think they're still in the early innings for a lot of this stuff. So I don't think there's any one thing. There's a couple. You've tried to find out what works best for you. And it's an ongoing thing. But one of the things I think, when we talk about these shows, just generally speaking, not about any one, these business kind of live streams, Paul and I started doing a weekly thing, I guess, at the beginning of the pandemic. And one of the things that we were kind of, and we're still kind of struggling with this, but one of the things that we wanted people to realize about CRM players, and I guess all the other things that we do, it's, I kind of get a little upset when somebody says, "Oh, that was a great session," or "That was a great, webinar." It's like, no, this is an actual show. I think people need to really think
Right.
about these. Not,
Webinar. Oh my
yeah.
god.
Oh, it's like you couldn't. How you spit on my
That
face? What
yeah,
is going
it's
on here?
not even a compliment really, is it? Like,
No,
oh my god.
I don't think that's meant to be a negative, but it's,
Right.
I think people, and this may help some folks who are doing these shows. You really got to think of it as a show. Like one of the things when we started doing, there was no Stump the Godfather segment. There was no Moment is Fin. We were kind of maybe we were initially kind of feeling like this is a session or whatnot. But one of the things we were focused on is trying to make people feel like they're not just watching a webinar or something, but no, this is a show with different show components, and
Right.
also hopefully getting the audience engaged so they don't feel like they're just a watcher or a spectator, that they're really a part of the show. So, that old Moment is Finn came out because Finn, every time we started a show, he would greet us in a different language. And Paul would just pick up on, oh, I know what language that is. And so eventually I was like, why don't we just make him, we'll call it the Moment is Finn. And that, that's one of the ways we start the show. So that was a show kind of thing. And then
Right.
Stump the Godfather, I don't even remember how that actually. came out, it's just me probably joking around with Paul or something. But people would get into, "Oh, that, can we take a shot at that too?" I was like, "Sure." So now we have, actual show component that
Right.
takes it further away from the webinar and the session feel. I think it's important that people that do this from a business kind of perspective, they gotta make sure they're not thinking, or not just thinking, but they're not acting like this is a webinar or a session. They gotta make these things feel like,
Right.
"Oh, it's just another part of the show," you know? And I think that makes it more interesting and appealing for folks to not just watch, but be a part and engage and ask questions and maybe they become a part of the show in some way. And I think that's the beauty of the live experience as opposed to, I know, I get the recording, there's space for all of this. So I think there are times where, we do it like when we're on at a conference or something, we can't get anybody or there's stuff going on at the regular time we do our show, which is Thursdays at 3. So sometimes we have to do stuff like that. But I think if you really want to get the most opportunity to engage and like grow, it doesn't even have to be a big audience, but an audience that actually feels like it's more of a community than an audience. That's how you can use the live stream to welcome folks not only back, but in, and they become a part of it.
Yeah, I'd like to get to your watch parties in just a sec you've been doing for keynotes because there's some fascinating things that have come out of that. But before I do, I just want to reframe this a little bit because I've been doing a lot of research on a core thesis that I have, which is that I think that more and more enterprise buyers want to buy into healthy communities and healthy quote unquote ecosystems, and they like seeing a vibrant community happening around what they're doing, and I think that's how vendors can and brands can learn from what it is you and Paul do because they could stand to cultivate more of that. And unfortunately, there's not a ton of stats on this. Though Salesforce has compiled a bunch of eye-watering stats around how participation in Trailhead reinforces all these buying signals and all these more likely to buy more products and all of this stuff. But it just makes logical sense that confidence in a platform and an application community around your product is a big deal these days. And so I would encourage a lot of vendors and brands to think about the long game a little more because that kind of the webinar you're describing is kind of a information dump lead gen vehicle. That's the short game. And that's not the long game. And both are necessary. I mean, you do need the lead gen, of course, or your sales team will get really angry. But in the long run, like you generate the confidence through the community. And webinars aren't great for that. And I get really frustrated, for example, because I do a lot of AI research on YouTube and I'll watch these replays. And invariably, it's all about holding the questions until the end. And then there's only time for like one question. And the mentality overlooks the fact that the questions are actually the most important part. And they're like, oh, we'll take the rest by email or whatever. And what you don't understand when you do that is that I want to see the questions live, and so does everyone else, because we all want to learn from the questions. We want to know what other people asked, and we want to see how you handle those deer in the headlights moments where a bit of a tough question comes up. And handling these as sidebars after the fact is a really losing proposition. And so I think folks could stand to watch that format and realize, yes, you can adapt this into your brand work as well. You don't have to just leave that to people like Brent and Paul and myself and Brian or whoever to do this stuff, or all your production network hosts like Rebecca Wedeman obviously does great work with this. There, everyone can do this. This isn't exclusive to us,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, and we are. I mean, we are seeing a lot of it, come up and crop up. Um, but yeah, I think it's. I think you got. to I think what we kind of think about it is we're not any smarter than anybody else that isn't doing that. There are lots of great people, lots of folks in the industry, lots of great things being written, and all sorts of people presenting. Um, and so we don't know any more than those folks. So just because we're, kind of doing this conversation, we need to have people like, all those folks that join us to come in and chime in, drop their knowledge. We, integrate it in because it is more of a community and that Trailhead, or what are they calling it now for Agent Force? Is it
Oh,
Agent Head
right.
or something? I don't know
Yeah.
what they call
Agent Trailhead?
it.
I don't know, like yeah.
I mean, besides the name. No, I think that is such a huge, treasure chest and a good example for, like, a vendor to look at in terms of growing a community and an ecosystem around your products and platforms. Because say what you want, there's a lot of excitement from those kind of folks. You look Adobe with the creator, well, I guess the more graphics and the artist kind of community. Those folks are passionate about the art, and anything that allows them to bring out that art, they're passionate about. And I think that's the same with, even in our industry with applications. That developer community is kind of what built Microsoft when you think about it back in the day. And if you're able to allow them to let them grow their passion, they're going to be with you forever. And part of that is now the content aspect. And yeah, going back to that, you don't have to do TikTok. You don't have to go that far. You can literally just get the right people together and don't have any shackles on them when they're talking about these important things, and let them go. I mean, that's some of the best content that you can get, and it doesn't take a lot. Just takes, inviting the right people, and it's not just about the right people in terms of what they know. You also kind of got to make sure that the right people together can make a great conversation out of it. Some people are great on their own, but when you put them in a group, it's like Hunger Games. Everybody's trying to. But if you get the right people together and get out of their way, I think last week was a great example. We had lots of great opinions, lots of great experiences, but it was also the kind of people that trust each other and respect each other. So when you get lots of great knowledge, experience, lots of trust, and a lot of space, then you get a great conversation, and that's when you can start taking pieces of it and putting it all over the place. But if you just, you get people that are scripted, or people that, they're trying to make sure they get certain talking points out, who wants to see that? I mean, not
Yeah.
many people wanna see that. Like you said, there's a space and time for kind of more marketing, content, and because you need the lead gen and, you need the sales. But there's also, I think, an opportunity to just the thought leadership stuff. I would call what we do and what you do conversational thought leadership, because
Mm.
the leadership comes out of the conversations, and it's not really focused on the marketing. It's really focused on the thought leadership and giving it a different way to kind of get it out there. I think there's
Oh,
a lot of
and
opportunity for that.
and by the way, a lot of purchases come out of that too eventually for brands because so much of B2B purchasing is still about trust and confidence, and you build that confidence through more transparent formats. I was talking to an analyst relations director about this because they had experimented with putting some analysts in charge of moderating some of their sessions, and I think it mostly went really well. And one of the points I was making about it is that that shows a lot of confidence because you're basically letting people like me, because I ran one of them, like you're giving me control of the stage. And you know that you don't know what I'm going to do because I don't know what I'm going to do.
Well,
Like,
that's the thing. That's the beauty of it.
and by putting your leaders on stage with someone like that, what you're doing is you're saying, we're confident in what we have to offer and we're confident in our team and we're confident that they're ready for the likes of you, you know? And that sets such a great tone versus like, oh, command and control, over moderated panel, vendor moderating their own stuff and keeping a really tight leash on everything. That just doesn't inspire buyer confidence. And I had an argument with someone about this last night because they were like, well, I was talking about these more magical experiences that happen when you let go a little bit and let that flow, like you were describing. And they were like, oh, but you can't measure that. And I was like, hold on a sec. Actually, you can. It's just that you do have to create sometimes some new KPIs for some of that. And some of the KPIs are a little more advanced. Now, look, you can't capture everything in a KPI. Like you can't necessarily capture, when I see an analyst pull a vendor aside in a hallway conversation and tell them something that's wrong with a product that they're shipping, and you can't always quantify the value of something like that, but you can quantify a lot of this stuff because buyer behavior can be tracked. It's a digital world. You can track attribution, you can track multi-touch, you can track sentiment. All of these things, the idea that you can't track it and that you don't have a KPI for it, that's just a lazy reason to stick with what you've got and not expand out of your comfort zone. That's all that is.
Yeah, I think and once again, one of the more interesting keynotes from earlier this year, NVIDIA GTC. Before the opening keynote, they had like a pre keynote show, and it was moderated by the co-host of the Acquired podcast. So, and they said one of the things they said right off the bat is, "Look, you know, we thank NVIDIA for allowing us to do this. We just want to make you guys know, the people watching, we are not NVIDIA employees, and they did not tell us what to say. And you're going to hear some things from us that you probably wouldn't hear from them."
Yeah.
And then they let it rip, and it was really good. They had Bill McDermott on for a little while. And then Jensen Wang kind of broke in and served him some Denny's because he apparently when he was a kid, that was like his first job was Denny's. So he brought them all some breakfasts. It felt like completely unscripted, although I know there were some formats, but it didn't feel like, you're seeing CEOs, in a different kind of setting and getting asked different kind of questions from what you're used to seeing at these events. And it made it a compelling part of the overall keynote experience. And the last part of that is at the very same time, Adobe Summit was going on, and their keynotes were, I think they were like an hour apart. So there was a lot of overlap. Um, Adobe was a little bit more of this kind of standard fare that we kind of used to seeing. And then there's NVIDIA, what they did, and then what Jensen came in and all that. So I like at the end of that day, I wanted to see just, how many viewers each of these things got, right? So when I looked at Adobe's, channel and what they got for the Summit live stream, it was a live stream. I think it was 3,800 views at the end of at the first day. 3,800 views for the opening keynote. When I went over to Nvidia, they had 38 million views,
Mm.
and I don't know if there's a correlation because I can't specifically say, but it felt like the way that the NVIDIA keynote was done with adding outside voices, as host of the pre-show and then going right into Jensen. Of course, that's a whole other thing. 38 million to 3,800 is a huge difference.
Oh,
And it,
hell yeah.
and so every watch party we've done for this year, we bring in folks like you. And we even, we evolved uh, Liz Miller into an in-room correspondent. So,
Yeah.
so we're all sitting in our own little spots, and then Liz is actually in the keynote, and
Right.
she was feeding us her commentary from inside as we are all doing our commentary.
And the cool thing about that, by the way, is she had VIP views of, VIP customers and key players and their reactions, which is priceless. And that's the one thing that's really hard to get virtually. So that was
Yeah, next
cool.
time we're gonna have to get her a camera so she can get us a picture of the actual news.
Yeah.
But yeah, and all of these things are opportunities to create content that brings a little bit more than what we're used to. And I think vendors, they got to know us, and a lot of them know us because we've been doing this for years. And they got to feel like they should hopefully feel like they can trust us to, not try to do gotcha stuff because we're not trying to do that. We're literally asking questions that we're hearing from others and that we have for ourselves, and trying to do it in a way that is more informative than accusatory or picking at things. We want, I think, what our audiences want are to be able to have even discussion. It's not just something that comes off as, oh, it's just marketing, or all that we're feeding them the questions that they want. We want to ask questions that we have and that folks that are watching us have, in a way that isn't gonna like put you, at some sort of a, feeling like you got to protect yourself, because people want honest, open, natural, discussions about things that are important to them.
Hey, Tammy, nice to see you. I'm glad that the new camera is working well. Let me get my mouse isn't working well. The new camera is, so that's cool. Yeah, I'm psyched about this, Tammy. It's been kind of a long road to find one that actually works for me. It's kind of a long story, but this one seems to be pretty good. That's great. And yeah, I hope the big vendors are listening. You know, Tammy, some of them do and some of them don't, and some of them do selectively, and it's a work in progress for sure. I think one of the things, and I write a lot about event design and event participation because it's part of my B2B buyer sort of framework thing. And my big thing is that a lot of what we have in events are legacy artifacts. So I would argue that the keynote is something of a legacy artifact of pre-pandemic events. And people don't get on airplanes, folks, to watch 2 and 3 hour keynotes. They just don't. That's not why they're at your event. And the big lesson from the pandemic is that all of this stuff should be and usually is available on replay. And that's not why they're there. They can catch their keynote in their own time. And so part of this, Brent, is that attention and attention economy does not mean your undivided attention. And vendors need to really understand that point because it's really, really crucial. So for example, like when I talked to to a vendor about the watch party concept, I said, "Hey, have you been following what the CRM players are doing here? Because they're throwing these watch parties, and I'd like to do one for your event because I didn't think you guys were going to cover that particular event because it's not a real CX kind of focused thing." And so anyway, I planted the seed and let them think about it. But what I said was, I realize this is a little outside the comfort zone of some, marketing people because we will be talking over some of the keynote, right? But and we're going to be snarky sometimes too, right? And that's part of it, right? There's a snark factor in that, and the key is to get the right balance, right, between, oh, I like this, oh, this isn't good, this is funny, and not talk over everything because you don't want to be like the sports broadcaster that talks too much. But it's like I said, the advantage of it is it starts to feel like an event again, like because keynotes have grown stale. And NVIDIA is not a good example, Brent, because in that sense, because NVIDIA is probably the sexiest and most watched company in the friggin' world right now. But let's face it, the average vendor is not NVIDIA, and they don't have a CEO like Jensen either. Like,
Right.
and I'm pretty critical of NVIDIA, but I got to give them their friggin' flowers for all of that, right? That
Yeah.
you just have to. So, so the point is, vendors, you got to reinvent this stuff. And part of this means letting go of the script a little bit and saying, you know what? I want these guys to come talk over my keynote because they're going to be funny and interesting. And occasionally they might even be insightful and have insight. And, and anyone who wants to watch the uninterrupted version, they can do that on their own time from now into eternity.
It's like, ESPN, they do Monday Night Football. They have like the main broadcast with Troy and the other guy that I really don't like, Joe Buck. But then they have the Manning cast, what's on the other channel, and it's a completely different experience, a watching experience. So you have people, you give them a choice. People come to us and say, oh, I'll never watch a regular keynote again because I enjoy what I'm hearing because it's not all positive, and it's also you guys are having fun. You're sharing your opinions in real time. It's and their first blush reactions because we can see, when you hear something that caught your attention either positively or negatively, you're not faking that reaction. It's your gut, and then you talk about. It's just a different way to view it, and there's a lot of folks who like that, and then there's even more folks, of course, like the traditional way, so they can hear everything. But there's opportunities to do both, and I think when we went into the pandemic and everything went virtual, and people were asking, what should we do? I remember I had a couple of vendors. You're into this video, so what should we do? And they started taking some, some thoughts I had, and they put them into use. And then, the pandemic kind of ended, and a lot of those folks went back to they brushed off their old playbooks and
Yep.
went back to what their comfort zone was because now they could do that. And I think that's a mistake because you were doing things differently. And a lot
Yep.
of people like that stuff, and they don't they'd rather see you build on that than kind of resort to what you were doing beforehand.
I've written about this. I won't go into all the examples now, but I saw so many incredibly cool examples of virtual engagement in the pandemic that brands haven't repeated since, to their own detriment. It's like you learn all these amazing things, and we're in a hybrid world now, right? Where you need the on the ground stuff, but pulling in the right kind of virtual stuff makes sense. And I'm going to go so far as to say that I think watch parties are the future of enterprise keynotes. Now, I do realize that there are times where people at certain points just want to focus and don't want distractions. But in general, I think watch parties are the future of enterprise keynotes, and brands need to get ready for that. Uh, Tammy's on fire here. Hi. She says, "I agree with your event topics on Diginomica. Keynotes needs work. Here's the one for the highlight reel, Brent. You're right. No one is paying my travel to hear a keynote. You hear that? You hear that, brands? Like, it's getting harder and harder to get business approval for your events.
Wow.
And they don't wanna hear, "How was the keynote?" That's not why they're sending people to your event.
There's so many opportunities to dress up and what do they call it, reimagine a lot of this experience because just look at what's going on like on YouTube. YouTube, when there's a football game, these guys are live streaming the football game. They're not necessarily showing it because you get in trouble with that, but they are live streaming it and sharing what's going on, their opinion of what's going on. They've got people watching, like thousands of people watching their take of what's going on with the football game. And chiming in, sharing their thoughts. It's because people never really just wanted to be a spectator for a lot of this.
Right.
They've always wanted to be a part of what they're seeing. So this is the way this watch party stuff gives people a voice. And it's not just us on screen, but it's the people in the comments section. They are right there with us. They have thoughts they want to share, and they want to make sure that we show their thoughts and we talk about their thoughts so that they become even more ingrained in it. And I don't see that trend going the other way anytime soon. I think you're right, John. I think people giving these technologies and these platforms, it allows us to invite them in and be a part of what's going on in real time. And if you ignore that, ignoring like a really good opportunity to grow an ecosystem, a community ecosystem around your product.
Totally. But it does require a little bit of a change. You're giving up a little bit of control, and look, you don't have to not you can still do all your regular streams and stuff, but you do have to accept the fact that there is gonna be a control element lost, but there's something gained as well. And one of the most interesting things I think you told me about this is that some of the vendors you've done watch parties for have really loved watching those replays and hearing the little, like, nuggets and reactions, because that's kind of priceless to see that in real time, right? And see how those things went over live. So,
Yeah, during and afterwards, that watch party video, you talk about great opportunity to create some clips, short form content. Oh man, I mean, whenever I have John on one of our watch parties, I'm already thinking, okay, yeah, that one's gonna be a good. That one's good. And I do clip the compilation clips are really catching on. So it's not
we
necessarily.
had a really fun one about customer journeys, because Paul, like, totally hates that term, and I was, like, having fun with that, and it was just a moment, right? Like,
But it's
that was
those moments
yeah.
that people actually enjoy because it's not the traditional keynote like you're saying. It's the kind of the things that surround it, the voices that can surround it, and you feel like, oh man, this is, and then you start commenting yourself. That's what we want as folks that do this. We want to invite people to be a part of it and not feel like they're some sort of secretary or spectator. We want people to feel like they're a part of it because that helps us too, because we get a perspective from them that we are like, okay, when these vendors ask us, what these folks are saying, we not only can tell them, we can actually show them, hey, don't take our word for it. Check out this clip. And it works great.
Yeah, and Tammy's saying that engagements is lacking in virtual events. And Tammy, I went on a big thing on that earlier in the show if you missed that. But yeah, there's just so much opportunity for for rethinking that. And this isn't new. I mean, like I said, we've been through the pandemic. We know how to do these things. Like let's apply some of these lessons. Uh, you're saying also that hope you have a watch party for SAP Tech Ed. I might, Tammy. The only thing I have to work out there is that ASUG Tech Connect overlaps with that, and I'm participating in that program. I may even see you there. Who knows? So I got to balance those two things. But if the scheduling works, I'll definitely do that. And my watch party strategy is basically like if Brent and Paul aren't going to do one, and I'm at an event, then I'll probably try to do one. If they're going to do one, I'm just going to join theirs because I think they already have a great format. So it's better to just join forces at that point. But yeah, if there's something they're not covering and I'm going to be there, I'll throw up a watch party as long as the vendor's on board, because I don't really want to go at cross purposes with the vendor that flew me out to an event. That's the thing. If I'm not being flown out and I'm just at home, then maybe I'll just throw it up there without notice. But it just depends on the situation with the vendor. But again, this all comes down to relationships, right? And I think, Brent, what we find is that there's enough folks that are open to this stuff that you can have these discussions and say, hey, here's what we want to do. Here's what you got to be prepared for. you know, here's the challenges, here's the good parts. And but the bonus for you is that it feels like a real event again, because the whole point about a watch party is implying that what you're doing is actually worth watching. So that's cool, you know? Bring
Yeah.
your popcorn.
I remember when we first started doing these, we didn't ask anybody. We were just like, all right. We actually were just replicating what we did at when we were physically sitting in the keynote arena. And there's always the analyst row, and so we would always be talking while we're watching what's going on. So all we thought we were doing was like, we're just going to do the same thing, except now we're going to, stream it. And I don't really remember if we ever got any negative feedback, but what's happened, and we couldn't have planned this, is now vendors are you guys going to do a watch party? Do you need anything from us to do it? And I was like, great. Sometimes they get us a nice space, and they know better than to try to control it, because it would ruin it if they, wanted us to do a watch party, or gave us, the space, and then wanted to like control it. That would be what's the point of doing it? You got to let us do what we do.
Yeah, for sure. And Tammy's saying that she thinks not only better engagement, customers are more likely to remember the keynote. I mean, I think that is true for me because I have an attention span problem during keynotes now. And so the watch party actually forces me to listen more so I can actually say something useful. I didn't used to have this attention span issue, Brent, but after all these thousands of keynotes, it's become a problem for me. I just drift off so quickly when I start seeing the gobbledygook and the overwrought demos and, you
Well,
know,
that's the thing that we have a very unique perspective, is because we go to a lot of these things, and we have a lot to kind of talk about, because, if you go to 20 opening keynotes, you don't look at them all the same. That maybe somebody goes to one keynote because that's part of their job. They need to go for, a network and all that stuff. So we have a different perspective. And I think, it might work for some people. We're hoping, we don't know if it'll ever help, but we're hoping that kind of as the year goes through, the things actually that we might see and talk about over and over again from whatever vendor event we go to, hopefully by the end of the year, maybe we'll see some changes, because we're not talking just because, we think we need to talk. We're saying, oh my God, we're seeing this again. Can somebody do something a little different? And sometimes it might actually happen later on in the year. So we'll never know the impact.
back in the early days of Skype, when Skype was a thing and not a product that Microsoft basically did the old Yeller to, we Dan Howard and I would organize these keynote back channels on Skype, and that stuff was blazing. And I always thought about, like, what would it be like to have more of a public version of that, right? Because I always learned so much from the reactions of other people, because I'm just one dude, and I think it's interesting to just mix that up and to expose it to the public and say, you know what, like, we're not having private conversations as much as we used to in that sense. People are discussing vendors sorry, vendors, but you're on Reddit. You know, like people are talking about you, and you have to deal with that now. Tammy says she can't remember the content of the last keynote she watched. Tammy, you are just killing it for me here. Uh,
And she's
and
right.
Tammy has an attention span problem too. And by the way, vendors who are watching this who may not know Tammy Palace, Tammy is not a LinkedIn pundit. Uh, Tammy is a customer. So
Wow.
and an influential customer in the SAP ecosystem. So
Very
maybe
cool.
maybe pay attention to what Tammy has to say there, because that's a customer telling you that she's not getting on planes to watch keynotes.
Hey,
So
by the way, I just got an instant message from my buddy John Lawson
are
asking
you
where
late
I
to your
am.
show?
Asking where I am. I completely lost. It was such a great conversation. I completely lost track of
Oh,
time.
dude, yeah. I mean, you got to go to your actual show. All right, well, let's end at this immediate stop. Sorry for the hard stop. You got to go to your show. Folks, continue over on Brent's show with John. You don't want to miss that. That's always fun. Great way to end the week. So, pass the mic over to Brent and John, and we're out of here. Thanks a lot, Tammy, for joining us.
Great, great stuff, Tammy. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for the cam test. That was great. Catch you later, Brent.
All right. See ya.
Yep.
I'm gonna roll here.
Yep. Catch you.